Hey everybody, Dr. Fun Guy here. We're back with with part two of painting the Slann Starmaster. We painted his skin and other stuff last time. Right now, we're going to paint his chair that he sits on. The chair is basically a magical hovering chair that has like these little stones right here to make it hover, and there's a bunch of terrain features on his base as well. This tree log, the stone, little leaves, etc. So, without further ado, let's get started. So for this, I primed with gray because this chair is actually made out of stone. So for this, what we're going to use, yeah, we're going to use this big brush right here. What we're going to do, we're going to apply a simple wash of Agrex Earthshade. So what we're going to do, check out the paint like so. Oh, and this chair is kind of big, so I had to stack my camera on something a little taller so I can get the whole thing into one shot. I'm going to move my weld palette because I do need more room for this. Perfect. All right, so take some Agrex Earthshade. We're going to put this on the palette like so. We will need quite a bit of this. Now you may be wondering, why not use a black wash? Well, the reason why I'm using Agrex Earthshade is because this is an old stone recipe that I used, and it works very awesomely. So what we're going to do is just apply this all over the stone. And yes, it is a brown wash, but don't worry, the dry brushes we're going to add later are going to make it more gray. Just be very careful. You can apply this at, like, it's not going to matter where it goes. Just try not to do any pooling into the recesses or on flat areas. Just keep moving the paint around a little bit. Sorry, it looked like the camera was about to fall over. Just keep doing it. Just keep going. Shade now dry. We are now going to start dry brushing the stone. So for this, we're going to start off with a dry brush of another gray. We're going to use a lighter gray. For this, we're going to use Dawn Stone. So what we're going to do, check out the paint like so. We are going to dry brush this like the other paints like we've done in the past. So what we're going to do, make sure I open up Dawn Stone because this is a new pot. So what we're going to do, for right here, what we're going to do, take some Dawn Stone onto our large dry brush. And what we're going to do is basically like this. And wipe off most of the paint. You can apply a kind of a harder dry brush than usual. But what we're going to do is simple. Basically, all we're going to do is this. So what we're going to do, after this is done, we are now going to go with circular motions and just highlight the stone. So as you can see, it's highlighting the stone right here. See, like this part where it's just pure wash. And right here, circular motions or flicking. As you can see, it's more looking like stone now, which is exactly the effect we want all over the stone. Don't worry about getting this on the other details. We're going to repaint those later. As you can see, the finish is going pretty good. Just continue with this dry brush all over the stone, which is pretty much the whole chair. And also the stone on the ground as well. Alright, after the Dawn Stone is dry brushed, we're now going to move on to a lighter dry brush. For this, we're going to use Administratum Gray. So what we're going to do with the Administratum Gray, the purpose of this is basically all we're going to do is going to take one lighter shade of gray and then basically dry brush the raised details on the stone. So what we're going to do here is simple. So what we're going to do, make sure there's almost little to no paint with the Administratum Gray. What we're going to do is very simple. Just an even lighter dry brush. See, as you can see, it's catching on the raised details. As you can see, it's getting more of the aged stone effect we're looking for. And just keep on going around. So now done, we're going to start painting in all the bone on the miniature. Which are these little spikes? Which are these spikes right here? For this, we're going to use a base coat of Zandri dust. So what we're going to do, take some Zandri dust, shake it up. Basically, what we're going to do is take the Zandri dust and we're going to do a little feathering effect. Feathering, as in, like to make the horn look like it was growing before it was taken off or whatever. So what we're going to do is simple. Send down the Zandri dust. What we're going to do, we're going to base coat all over the horns. Try to avoid the gold, but don't worry. If you do, go back and just reapply that later. That's now done. We are now going to shade all over the bone detail. For this, we're going to use Agrax Earth Shade. So normally when I shade bone, I like to use Seraphim Sepia, but I just want to use Agrax Earth Shade because this model actually has some darker bone color to it. Now there's a skull on the throne we will have to paint later, but don't worry, it's just a little skink skull that we won't be able to see, but don't worry. I'm just using this brush so it does not wait no point. Get some Agrax Earth Shade, put on the palette. What we're going to do, undiluted, we're just going to apply a little nice smooth coat over all the bone, just all over the bone. If you want, you can also do this quite sparingly. What I mean by that is that you can just highlight certain, shade certain parts, but we're going to shade all over the bone. Alright, with the Agrax Earthshade now dry, we now have this beautiful effect on the bone details. So, what we're going to do is going to start a technique called feathering to make it look like the horn was actually growing before it was taken off. So without further ado, let's get started. For this, we're going to reapply some Zandri dust. What we're going to do with the Zandri dust is that we're going to apply it a little sparingly. So we're not going to apply this in any of the recesses. We're going to make sure we have a fine tip on our brush, like so. And what we're going to do, see where the recess details are right here, like this little recess right here. We're going to do, make sure there's a good fine tip. And all we're going to do, just highlight among that. Just highlight a little bit like that, just very gently. And then you can just paint the whole horn like this because, you know, it's the lighter detail. But we're also going to paint feathers. See, right here. See, and we're all, it's kind of like stippling in a way, but in a way, yes. Just do it like this. Just do this all over the bone, and it will give you that really cool illusion that you're looking for. And also just keep going up on it to brighten it up with the Zandri dust. Part done of the horns, or the bone. You can call them horns or whatever you want, but it's still bone. We're going to dry brush the lighter parts now. After the Xandri dust, we're now going to dry brush Morgoth's bone. So what we're going to do, take the Morgoth's bone, we're going to dry brush it like what we've been doing. So what we're going to do, take a dry brush. I'm going to use my dry brush right here. What we're going to do, wipe off most of the paint. Just making sure I get enough, but not too much. So what we're going to do, you don't have to do this for the horns with the caps on them, but watch this. So what we're going to do for this horn right here is that we're going to gently dry brush all over it, and as you can see, it's lightening the horn. So what we're going to do here is that, look where the original Xandri does this, we're going to go about halfway and basically just dry brush. There we go, and it gets that subtle it's that nice little blend that you were looking for when it comes to bone. Alright, with the Morgoth's bone now dry brushed, what we're going to do is going to do another final dry brush onto the tips of the horns. For this, we're going to use Screaming Skull. So what we're going to do, take some Screaming Skull. What we're going to do is take some Screaming Skull, get some onto our brush like so, and we're going to dry brush it again on some paper towel. We're getting into the bristles, just make sure there's not too much paint on the bristles. I'm just making sure I get a good amount so that way I don't have to worry about dry brushing later. Okay. So this is the very, very tips of the horns. Obviously, the ones with the caps don't matter. So what we're going to do is this. So look on this right on the farthest top, sorry about that, the tips of the horns, and just dry brush towards those. See? Okay, and that's all the bone done. Now done. We will paint this skull here eventually, but we're going to do something else right now. We're going to paint all the wood on the miniature. And there's actually quite a bit. We will have to vary between brush sizes. So what we're going to do is going to base coat all over the wood and bark using Thondia Brown. So you could of course use, if you don't want to use Thondia Brown, you could of course use Rhinox Hide. I'm just using Thondia Brown because it has a nice little dark, but not too dark of a wood tone. We're going to take some Thondia Brown, thin this down. So what we're going to do is this. See, like where all these vines are, believe it or not, those vines are actually wood as well. So what we're going to do, paint this in with Thondia Brown. Yeah, just paint all the wood areas with Thondia Brown. And of course, this giant part, then this giant tree right here. Just base coat all over nicely with Thondia Brown. It may take two thin coats, but don't worry, just take your time, really worth the effort. And also, just be sure to paint all the vines, branches, anything, and with Thondia Brown. Base coated with Thondia Brown, we are now going to shade all the wood. You can select some parts of the shading, but we're not going to shade all of it. We're just going to shade where the recesses are. So what we're going to do, first off, we're going to shade the wood. For this, we're going to use Agrax Earthshade. So what we're going to do, check out the Agrax Earthshade like so. And what we're going to do, open up the pot. I am going to get a better brush for this. Let me see if I can find it. We will have to use this brush right now. So take this brush. What we're going to do, take some Agrax Earthshade and put it on the palette. Get a good dollop of this. What we're going to do is that we're going to apply this all over the wood. So for this, we're going to start with the massive tree right here, obviously. As you can see, the wash is going to the recesses. This will darken the brown, but don't worry, this is exactly what we want for the bark. And also for some parts of the wood that have little creases right here, just shade all over the branches as well. May take some time, but don't worry, just take your time. It'll be really worth the effort. But also for the other smaller parts of the wood, what you can also do, take some Eggers Earthshade. We're going to use a smaller brush, which is perfect. And what we're going to do with it is basically for the smaller vines where you can't really get a big brush in, just use a smaller brush. See? And it really helps. Almost dropped the camera. Wash now dry. And now with the wash now dry, we're going to start highlighting. I had to move the camera down so it doesn't fall over like the last time. So what we're going to do, we're going to use Mornfang Brown. What we're going to do, take some Mornfang Brown, get our fine brush again. What we're going to do is basically take some Mornfang Brown, put it on the palette like so. There's still some left here from earlier, but you know, from a different project. So what we're going to do, look for the raised edges see the ridges right here on the wood, like right here on this bottom part. What we're going to do, oh, and by the way, we do have to thin down the Mornfang Brown a little bit more than usual so it doesn't overpower. But do look for the ridges of the vines where you can see these little ridges right here. Very little paint on the brush, and as you can see, what we're going to do, paint lines, and just paint little lines here and there, not all over, just where your ridges are, so that way we can get a nice finish and it'll look like wood afterwards. And also the same for these top parts right here. What we're going to do, see this little ridge right here? Just paint alongside that, not inside the recess, just around it. And just keep on going, and we're going to paint little lines everywhere. And just, if you feel like there's a little too much, just wipe it off a little bit with your finger. And do this all over the wood, and just take your time. You can add as much or as little as you want, but then again, this is your miniature. I'm just showing the way how I do it. Oh, and by the way, that's just water from Earth that just got on my finger. It's not blood. You could repeat the same process right here. Actually, we will on the big tree, but for right now, we're going to focus on the vines. Brown, the line highlighted all over the wood, we are now going to start off with another little highlight for the wood. For this, we're going to take a finer highlight, or just a little highlight of XV88. What this is going to do is that this is more of an ochre tone. Well, it is ochre actually. What we're going to do, take some XV88, put it on the palette like so. We do need to thin this down quite a bit because we don't want too much overpowering the wood. So what we're going to do, as soon as it's thinned down very, very thinly, what we're going to do, take our fine brush again that we have right here. What we're going to do, we're going to paint thin lines again. But this is at the XV88, so just be very, very sparingly. So, and also for the wood, like right here, like on the bottom of the base, what we're going to do, and just follow those ridges right there, and just highlight with the XV88 right here. Just follow the ridges and add an extra sharper highlight. Again, you don't want to do too much of this. Just make sure there's just enough to make it look like wood. Just be very, very careful. And also you can go inside the highlights right here to add some color variation. And if you get too much, just wipe it off. There you go. Just try to sell the wood effect is what we're trying to do here. And also when it comes to the edge of the bark of the tree like here, just do little lines like that. And same for the vines, just do very small lines, that's all. XV88 now dry, we now have the really cool wood effect that we're looking for, as you can see right here. So right now we're going to paint the green on the model. And by green, what I mean is all the vegetation. Not all of them, but we're going to pick them out a little bit. So for this, we're going to start off with the moss. So for the moss, we're going to use Striking Scorpion's Green. So what we're going to do, take Striking Scorpion Green, and what we're going to do, shake out the paint like so. Just shake it up real nice. This will also give it that really cool glow effect, but the reason why is because some of the moss has really bright green. Take some Striking Scorpion Green. What we're going to do, just apply this on all the moss. I also base coated those details with white off camera. What we're going to do, try not to hit anything, but we're going to basically hit the moss with Striking Scorpion's Green. Just paint this all over the moss. I'm only going to keep this on the moss because I just wanted it on the moss. So wherever there's moss on the miniature, just paint it with Striking Scorpion's Green. And just be very, very careful. Alright, with the Striking Scorpions now green, for the moss, we're going to start painting in some of the leaves. So for the leaves, not all of them, for most of it, for some of them, we're going to paint, you can use Mantis Warrior's Green. Mantis Warrior's Green is essentially a lime green. I'll show you in just a minute. So what we're going to do, take some Mantis Warrior's Green. What we're going to do, go right here, and what we're going to do, put this on some of the leaves. Like, see this leaf like right here on the bottom? We're going to paint this with Mantis Warrior's Green. It has that nice little plant color. You can also do the leaves a different color, but what we're going to do, we're going to paint all of these, most of the leaves with Mantis Warrior's Green. This just has that nice, pleasant the plant color. So what we're going to do is that, if you may notice, some of these leaves are still painted gray from earlier, which is perfect. Reason why I say perfect is because if you look on this vine leaf right here, what we're going to do, paint that with Mantis Warriors green, and when they're still gray, or like brown or whatever, just paint them a little bit of this color, and basically we're utilizing it a little bit. And what we're going to do is going to basically make darker green colors. And don't worry, we'll paint over these leaves later. Nice little coat. That's all. And with the Mantis Warriors green, we're now going to use Militarum green. So what we're going to do, basically, I just like to do a little bit of variety with this because my miniature, and I just want to have fun with it. So Militarum green is more of a yellowish color. But what we can do later is that we can mix up the colors a little bit of the green. So what we're going to do, take some Militarum green and just put on some palette. And we're going to do the palette, we're going to do just base coat some plants with Militarum green. So essentially all we're doing is going to give a little bit of tonal variety to all the plants. That's all. And you can even mix these. And what I mean by mixing is that, like, take for example, like these leaves right here. I'll get to those in just a minute. Like for these leaves that we base coated earlier with that different color, what we're going to do is going to go over it with Militarum green and get like just a little darker finish. See? Mix and match, basically. Yeah, and all we're doing is getting a little variety all over the miniature. That's all we're doing. And also, you can leave this blank, but also for some leaves, like this one right here, we're going to also go and mix some Militarum green onto it, like so. So that way, for this one, we're going to go about halfway and just stop about right there. So that way we get some nice tonal variation all over the miniature. That's all. And just do a nice little even breakup with the green. That's all. And I did miss some moss parts, but I'm going to get those off camera. Oh, and now the last paint, or the last green we're going to use for the leaves is Gut Rip of Flesh. Check out the paint like so. Again, just some variety. Now this is more of a, drabish, so what we're going to do is this. Just pick them out. That's all we're going to do. And now, what I mean by mix and match is that, say like these ones that are a little like a brighter green, like right here, what we're going to do is going to add something a little bit to make it a little more darker. So for this, we're going to go back to Militarum green and going to darken some of those. It's kind of like the mixture I did earlier. Take some more Militarum green. What we're going to do, see these big leaves right here that I used with Mantis Warriors, and then we're just going to paint over it with Militarum green, so that way it has the original color, and it kind of mixes it a little bit. Basically, after we mix match some of the green, for some of the leaves, instead of contrast paints, you can go with classic, or the classic method. So for this, we're going to get our different types of green. So for this, I'm getting rainforest and a bunch of other greens, which we also have. Let me make sure I find it. Here we go. So for right here, we have rainforest. What we're going to do, take some rainforest. This is a squeeze bottle paint, so squeeze it onto the palette like so. This is a bit of a bright green, of course, so what we're going to do, we can apply this sparingly, but only onto the brighter leaves, like so. You can do some leaves with this color. All we're going to do is this. And also on the grass. Yeah, and this is all we're doing. And for other drab, the drab green that you can go for, we're going to go with Elysian green. Basically, my point here is to basically mix and match, basically. That's all. And for some other parts of the green, which is on the vine or bark, we're also going to use Lauren Forest. Lauren Forest is basically another drab paint. But again, use whatever shade of green you want. That's all. Just go all over with the green. Okay. And with all those done now, I'm still going to paint them more of them off camera, but you know, I just want to get back to the other details right now so I can move on. So, there's actually little critters on the base. There's 2 lizards and a couple of bugs that the slann eats, which are these right here. So, basically for the lizards, all we're going to do is going to do a nice little contrast paint. Let me make sure I find it. Here it is. We're going to use Eldari Emerald. Eldari Emerald is what we're going to use for the lizards. You'll see where they are in just a second. Take some Eldari Emerald. Basically, what we're going to do, there's little critters on the base. So what we're going to do is that if you look inside the log, there's actually a little lizard in there. Hi, little buddy. And basically what we're going to do, make sure there's not too much contrast paint. We're going to paint all over the lizard with Eldari Emerald. You can't really see it, but yes, there he is. He's right there. And also, there's a second little lizard on the throne, right here. Sorry if my hand shakes a little bit, but I always had a shaky hand. Alright, that's the lizards done. And for the other bugs, you can do variety. So for this one, for the little guys right here, we're going to use a blue contrast paint. Reason being I want to do blue is because those are actually blue little worms. So with this, we're going to use Frostheart. Shake out the paint like so. While the Frostheart are shaken up, what we're going to do, take some Frostheart, right, and put it on the palette, some on the palette like here. What we're going to do is going to paint this little casket of worms right here. Well, basket. So for right here, just paint over those worms with Frostheart. There we go, that's those done. And while we're at it, we are going to get some more contrast paint for these little beetle dishes. So for the beetle dishes, all we're going to do is that we're also going to apply another contrast paint. For this one, we're going to use Blood Angels Red. So what we're going to do, take some Blood Angels Red, shake it up. So what we're going to do, take some Blood Angels Red, put them on the palette. We don't need to thin this down. What we're going to do is that, let me hold the base steady, we're just going to base coat these little beetles. And for the last one, you can use whatever color you wish because it's just the beetles. And so what we're going to do is going to use a yellow paint, but I don't have any yellow unfortunately, so we're just going to go with a different color. So for this, we're going to go back with, pure Mantis Warriors green. So what we're going to do, take some Mantis Warriors green and just base coat these last little beetles right here for the slann to eat. All right, and that's the critters on the base done. And what we're going to do is that there is some soil on the base, which are these, and on the ground. So for this, we're going to use a base coat of Mournfang Brown. And even though I said it might have been moss, it was actually soil. So my apologies, but you can't really remember so much. So what we're going to do here is going to paint the soil. For this, we're also going to go in between the leaf. Don't worry, I'm just going to be very, very careful. If you don't worry, just paint over the leaf later. Just painting in the soil with Mournfang Brown. And also this giant, massive pile of soil right here on the ground. Now painted for right now, we're now going to start working on all the gold. So for the gold, what we're going to do is we're going to get a metallic paint. Let me make sure I find the right one. Ah, here it is. For this, we're going to use a base coat of Retributor Armor. So what we're going to do is get the paint like so. I'm just getting my other contrast paints out the way. So what we're going to do, take some Retributor Armor, and also a good tip to know, if you're using the same paint pot to wash out your brushes, if you use a lot of metallic paint, please change out your water, or else you'll get metallics in the other paint. So what we're going to do with the gold is that there's not much gold on here. What we're going to do is going to paint the gold right here, like underneath the chair, because right here, where these little like hover purple just stones are, we're going to paint, there's a little line of gold that goes right there. Just be very, very careful. And also, of course, on the bone details. Also, the one on the stone right here, the some on the stone right here, and these little bowls right here where he keeps the bugs. Yeah. Coated, and also these little engines right here have the gold. This is basically little hover plates. We are now going to apply a wash all over the gold. So for the gold, what we're going to do is flesh wash. So what we're going to do, shake up the flesh wash like so. And there is quite a bit of gold. Actually, I mean, not that much, but you know, still quite a bit because it is the Seraphon. Their metallic is gold. They may have some silver, but it's mostly gold. I am gonna thin this down a little bit with some water because this wash is a little thick. We're gonna go all over the gold with this wash. So we're gonna do, where there's a gold area, just use the flesh wash. As you can see, it's getting a nice little warmth to the gold, but it's also not over darkening it tremendously. Just apply the flesh wash all over the gold. And if there are some areas you might have hit that weren't gold, you can just fix those later. But also for the edges right here, you may get some gold on the white pieces, but that's fine. Just also shade the gold around there as well. You don't have to highlight it, but you can leave it as it is. We're just applying a nice simple highlight or shade, that's all. Alright, and with the gold now shaded, we are now going to shade some of the other details that we painted earlier. For this, we're going to go back to Agrax Earthshade. You may be wondering, what are we using this for? Well, it's for the dirt that I painted earlier. And what we're going to do, even though we're going to cover that up with the texture paint for a scenic base, all we're going to do is basically just shade in some of the dirt and other details. So what we're going to do, see like the dirt right here, just shade with Agrax Earthshade. And also for Agrax Earthshade, you can also add this on the wood to get a little like color effect. But also we're going to paint this skull, shade this skull right here. It's a skink skull basically. The reason why I'm using pure Agrax Earthshade is to give it to the skeleton feel that you see right here. See, one little coat, and it gets that little skull feeling that you're looking for. But try not to hit the feathers. Alright, now with those areas now shaded, we're now going to start highlighting the gold. So for the gold, all we're going to use is going to use a layer paint of gold. And make sure I find it here. We're going to use Auric Armor Gold. So what we're going to do, she got the Auric Armor Gold. What we're going to do, this is a lighter gold, of course. So, and it's a little transparent than the other metallics. So what we're going to do, take some Auric Armor Gold, put it on the palette like so. You'll need to thin this down a little bit with a little bit of water, but not too much, or also lose the metallic effect. We're going to do, like, if you look at this part of the gold right here, like say on this tusk right here, what we're going to do is just slide the brush. That's all. And leave the underside the original color. So that way, it can have a nice tonal variation. It was stuck on the paint pot for a second. Luckily, no paint got on it. You don't have to do this on all the gold. I'm just doing it on some areas, so that way it gives that nice little sharper gold finish. Now keep in mind, you don't have to do this on all the gold. I'm just doing select areas. Alright, and that's the gold done. For the feathers on the skink skull, which we shaded earlier, you can paint them however you want. But basically, I'm going to show you a really cool feather pattern. So for this, we're going to start off with a base coat of Frost Heart. So what we're going to do, check up the paint like so. The reason why I'm using Frost Heart is just for a base coat for the feathers, because you can paint these feathers however you wish. Take some Frost Heart. What we're going to do, look for the skink skull, and make sure there's not too much contrast paint. I'm going to paint all over the feathers with Frost Heart for right now. Let's base coat these with Frost Heart for right now. There we go. And also, while the paint is still wet, I'm going to clean off my brush. And what we're going to do, as soon as I wipe off my brush, I am going to blend in a little bit of another contrast paint. Let me just make sure I find it. We're going to blend in some Striking Scorpion's Green. Some Striking Scorpion's Green, and what we're going to do, you could let the first coat dry. I'm just doing this as a quick method for the feathers. We will need to thin this down a little bit, not too much. As you can see right here, it's building up that nice little cool blend effect. See? And wipe off your brush, and then we're going to loosely blend these. See? And it gets a nice little blend on the feathers. One last thing to add to the feathers before we finish, so that way it looks different from the leaves. We're going to add a little shade of Cassandora Yellow. So what we're going to do, Cassandora Yellow is a wash. So what we're going to do, shake the Cassandora Yellow. Put it over here. Now, of course, this is a shade, but it's going to be perfect. So what we're going to do right here, take some Cassandora Yellow. And all we're going to do right here is going to shade the tips of the feathers. So as you can see right here, and it's get that nice little blend going. You can also go all over the feathers if you wish. And wipe off most of the shade, and there we go. That's the feathers done. And now for this, if you built this version of the chair, they actually have purple glowing stones, which help the chair hover. So what we're going to do is going to get a brush. Let me make sure I find the right one real quick. Where is it? Ah, here it is. All we're going to do is going to apply a simple contrast paint. For this, we're going to use, where is it? Oh, we're going to use Luxian Purple. So what we're going to do, check out the paint like so. basically the purple stones on the chair. That's all we're going to do. Shake up the paint like so. Okay, so what we're going to do, take the contrast paint like so, and what we're going to do is this. Take some contrast paint. We don't need too much. All we're going to try to do is going to paint in the stone. So for this part, we're going to leave this stone a little untouched. If you do touch it, don't mind. You can just clean it up with some Clorox white later. What we're going to do is this. Gently blob it. And just color the purple stone with Luxine purple. You could, of course, build a version of the chair that doesn't have it, but I just like this version because it adds a little more visual interest. Actually, you know what? We can just go over this. Sorry, I just want to make sure. And while you have the Luxine purple out, don't forget to paint the stones right here that are on the edge of the bottom part of the chair too. Like say like this one on the side, but also these ones on the bottom. Nice blobs, but also just make sure you evenly coat those areas. After the purple is now base coat on all the magical stones, we are going to highlight them. We're going to use a stipple highlight to make it look like stone. So for this, we're going to use Warp Fiend Gray. Get the paint up like so. So what we're going to do, get some Warp Fiend Gray on our little brush right here. Just put it right here, and it down a little bit. You do actually want to thin this down quite a bit so that way it doesn't overpower. So what we're going to do is this. See, like where the edges are, like right here, you can also go in between the cracks. But what we're going to do is going to gently do it like this so that way it stipples, but we can also get that nice vibrant purple effect. Around the edges, but you can also, for this one, the center stone is a little lighter, so what we're going to do is going to stipple unevenly all over the center stone. And also for the other side, other stones right here, you can do the same effect, but also just be sure to highlight the edges right here. You can also dry brush this as well, but I'm just edge light highlighting the stone. After you're done with the for the finer edge highlights, we are going to now dry brush. So what we're going to do, we're going to have with the Warp Fiend Gray again, the pot is still open, and we're going to dry brush this on some parts of the stone. So we're going to take some Warp Fiend Gray in our dry brush, wipe off most of the paint off with tissue paper, or paper towel, whatever you have. And what we're going to do, like look where the stone is, like this purple one right here. Gently dry brush over those to give it the nice stone looking effect. And don't worry, we will go back over to make it a little more purple looking. And now, for the next part, what we're going to do is we're going to apply Luxine purple again, but we're going to thin it down. So you may be asking, why not just leave it as it was? Well, the reason being is so that way we can get the effect that we were looking for. So what we're going to do, take some Luxine purple. And then we're going to thin this down a little heavily to create a glaze. What this will do is that this will give the brighter stone the brightened magical effect that we're looking for on this. There we go. But also for the other side, where if you've gotten too much Warp Fiend Gray, you just go over this as well. And it'll give you the nice finish that you're looking for. Alright, now, with all that stone now done, we can now move on to finishing our base. So for this, I am going to do a little scenic base. So for this, we're going to make it look like a swamp. So what we're going to do is I'm first going to take my texture paint, Sterling Mud. Shake up the texture paint like so. Let me make sure I find my texture tool so I can actually do it. Ah, here it is. So for this, we're going to take our texture tool. I'm going to use this bigger end first. And what we're going to do is that I'm going to make it swamp by adding some water. And I'll show you the water effect in just a minute. But take some paint out of the pot like so. Get a nice little shovel hole. Take this. Avoid the stone. But we're going to pat, pat, pat all over. Where we want the mud. And also for the Morningtime brown areas, we are going to paint those over with the mud too. That way we can give it a nice little finish. And of course, while the texture paint is still drying, I never really done this on camera, but what we are going to do, we're going to take our brush right here, and even though there is grit in this, what we're going to do is going to take some of the paint where the edges are, and where we're going to have the water, just basically, just paint a thin layer. That way you can edge out, you can mark out the line, the edges, but you can also have a little bit of texture on the bottom. We're going to have our water probably about right here. Yeah. And basically, the reason why we're doing where we apply it like this is so that way, all we can do is we can just look for where to put the water later. We still want some texture underneath the water, so it looks like water. All right, there we go. That's the basing paste applied. After that part of the water is now done, well, at least the texture part, we are now going to focus on another base coat for the water. For this, we're going to use Stick It On Scale Green. And what we're going to do, shake out the paint like so. So what we're going to do is this. So, take some Stick It On Scale Green. What we're going to do, we might need to thin this down a little bit. So what we're going to do is going to basically mark out where the water is. So alright, and that's the base coat of Stick It On Scale Green. Now partially dry. While it's still wet, we are going to still wet blend a little bit. So basically for the water, we want a nice little murky feel. So for this, we're going to go with Cabalite Green. So what we're going to do with the Cabalite Green is we're going to blend it a little bit. We're going to take some Cabalite Green. And while the Stick It On Scale Green is still wet, what we're going to do is going to do this. This will mark the deeper edges, and for the lighter edges, we just stipple this on. I will fix the stone off camera, but let me see. Yes, this will give it, that little effect of, the shoreline. So that way, it will add the depth. and then blend the edges together so that way it doesn't look all messed up. And while we're waiting on it, while the paint is still wet, like I said, we're then going to use the third color. We're going to use Cyberite green. And what we'll do is this is, the same. Take some Cyberite green, put it on the pan. We will thin this down just a smidge. The paint is still wet, so what we're going to do is, just highlight the very areas, at the very edges of the shoreline. But what you can do is that you can also go all around, like the vein, but we're going to leave those bases the marker at the finish part. Alright, and that's the water done. And now while we're waiting to do the water effect, what we're going to do is going to start highlighting some of the paste. And basically what the paste is that, what I mean by the paste is that when this dries, for the most part, we will start highlighting. I'll be right back with that. Okay, it's now finally done. We can now start shading it. So it looks like mud. We're going to shade the mud with Agrax Earthshade. So what we're going to do is simple. So what we're going to do with this, basically, take some Agrax Earthshade, and basically all we're going to do is going to shade that. Is going to apply this all over the mud, just the mud only, not the water parts. Yes. So basically, we're doing the illusion of a swamp, basically. Alright, that's the Agrax Earthshade applied. And while that other part of the mud is now drying, we're going to move on to another wash. So what we're going to do is that we're going to apply a nice little wash of Solia Green Shade. So what we're going to do is basically take the Solia Green Shade. What we're going to do is that this is more of a teal, which is perfect for the water that we're looking for. So what we're going to do is this. Take some Solia Green Shade. And sure, this is mud texture, but we're just shading it a little bit so that we can give some texture to the rock, to the water bed. See, it's giving that nice little effect that we're looking for, see? Alright, that's the wash applied. Dry. We're finally going to dry brush the mud. So for the mud, all we're going to do is going to do a nice simple dry brush. We're going to use a little light dry brush of XV88. So what we're going to do, take some XV88. So what we're going to do, take some onto the brush. And we're going to dry brush this, of course, like we've been doing lately. So what we're going to do is that look on all the mud details, and basically we're going to gently dry brush those with the XV88. See, it's giving that nice little mud tone that you're looking for. I'm going to turn it around right here. And also, don't forget this little island part right here. Dry brush that. And yeah, and all the other mud details with XV88. And for the water, basically all we're going to do is going to do like another little dry brush. A very, very, very light one. First, we're going to turn to Cyberite Green. The reason why I'm doing this is that way we can have some texture on the bottom. So that way it kind of looks like the water. So what we're going to do, dry brush this on a paper towel. We don't want much, we just want very, very little. So what I'm going to do with the base, so as you can see right here, make sure it's not too streaky, just barely go over it, just barely. Just to highlight those details, and that's it. That's it. And while we're doing that, all we're going to do is going to take we're going to make it look like a little bit of green bog, kind of like what swamp is. So for this, we're going to use Disgusting Slime. This is an effects paint, but this is perfect for it. Squeeze some Disgusting Slime right here. This won't really dry to a high gloss, but this will work. Just as well. So we're going to take this brush, and what we're going to do, we're basically going to make it look like a bog in a way. So we're going to paint these right here to make it look like, yeah. You can stipple it, you can paint it, and I will fix the stone off camera. Just showing you right now how you can make this look like swamp. Try to spread it evenly so it doesn't dry as one solid color. There we go, and I'm just making sure I wipe off some of the excess, so that way, Alright, that's the slime applied. And while we have the slime out, let me make sure I can do this real quick. For this, we're going to make the water effect. For this, you can use Woods and Scenics products, but unfortunately, I can't really get a hold of that, so I am going to use an alternative. Let me make sure I find the proper size brush for this. Here it is. So we're going to use this brush, and then I'm going to get another effects paint. Where is it? So I can be sure which one it is. Storm Shield, was it? No, it was Art Coat. Where is it? Oh, we're going to use Art Coat Gloss Varnish. The reason why we're using Gloss Varnish is that way we can use this, and it can dry shiny, and it'll make it look like water. What we're going to do. Do a thick coat. Usually you want to do thin coats, but I want to do a thick one, so that way when it dries, it will give you the shine of water, basically. And you can mix this in with the slime and just spread it evenly throughout, so that way it dries all nice and shiny. But if you do not contaminate it, and then after it's contaminated, you do not want to do that. So what we're going to do is going to switch to a different brush. We're going to go to a large brush like this one, and then continue. Nice thick coat, just all over the water details. This side, just mix it again, that's all. Kind of want a thick layer and stuff like that. If you want, you can apply a second thin coat of gloss varnish. I'm just doing this right now because to get the water looking effect. Alright, that's the water done. Alright, the gloss varnish is still drying, but guess what? This is basically finished. Let me just turn on the camera light. So as you can see, we did a swamp theme base, and guess what? We attached our Slann Starmaster to the throne. So as you can see, this miniature, so it may have been a pain for me to paint, but this is a really fun miniature. I love this model. So, and I'm going to leave the Slann unglued, so that way you can see the pattern if you want to pick them up, or you can just put them back again. You can glue them down if you wish, but this is just my method. So again, this is just my method, of course, painting the Slann Starmaster with my own custom paint schemes. But I assure you, please feel free to experiment, or you can follow the official guides. So, this concludes part 2 of painting the Slann Starmaster. I really hope you enjoyed watching this tutorial. Happy painting! Bye bye!